One of the most remarkable stories in the UFO diaries began on the night before Halloween, 1938. The famous actor and director Orson Welles led his Mercury Theater of the Air in a radio drama in the form of a news broadcast, telling their listening audience that invaders from Mars were rapidly conquering the entire Earth. In spite of announcements telling everyone the show was dramatized, thousands believed it was a real event, and panic broke out across the country. Orson Welles and the members of the Mercury Theater seem to have proven that a story about invaders from another planet could be readily believed by thousands, even when there's not one scrap of truth behind it. For all practical purposes, they had invented the UFO hoax. But according to many UFO researchers, that hoax would by no means be the last.
Yeah, right.
In the last 50 years, there have been hundreds of people who have come forward with various UFO claims. But it later turned out, upon investigation, that these people were in fact hoaxers. The hoaxes themselves can range from simply taking a UFO picture to writing books claiming that the individual had flown to Venus on a UFO. In some cases, the individuals will present evidence which supposedly backs up their story, but again, upon investigation, the evidence proved not to be valid.
Because of hoaxers, UFO researchers have been forced to provide more evidence for their claims. So for all of us seeking the real truth behind the UFO phenomena, hoaxes and frauds are a continual nuisance, especially when they're accepted by a large number of people as being the real truth.
But how can hoaxes be detected? What methods do UFO researchers use to determine the credibility of a UFO report?
It's generally helpful to consider the motivations of a person presenting a UFO report.
Historian Curtis Peebles tells how the truth behind one UFO report was discovered.
In 1950, a man named Frank Scully wrote a book titled Behind the Flying Saucers. In it, he claimed that the U.S. government had recovered a crashed flying saucer near Aztec, New Mexico. Scully said he had been told the story of the crash by a millionaire oil man named Silas Newton.
Now look, I'm giving you the story of the century, and if you know what's good for you, you're going to take it and run with it.
That may be true, but I'm not going to write no story based on the evidence you told me. I have a reputation at stake.
Now look, what if I were to give you some incontrovertible, verifiable proof that what I'm telling you is true?
What kind of undeniable proof can you show me?
And now you take a look at these.
Newton described this disc as having remarkable qualities that no earthly material could match.
Scientists in the country test it. He says it's bona fide. If he says it is, you know it is.
All right, Silas, I'll test these. And if they're true, I'll write your story.
That's all I want.
In fact, it was ordinary aluminum, the same as used in pots and pans. It had taken one very resourceful newspaper man named J.P. Kahn to uncover the truth behind the story. They used the crash saucer story to defraud investors in their various oil exploration schemes.
Man's in here, we tell them we got out of space, man, and we sell them shares at $50 per. And we say, hell, these guys are going back and forth between worlds. They sure as hell can dig a well.
Subsequently led to their arrest and conviction on fraud charges.
The Aztec incident and J.P. Kahn's exposure of the hoax illustrate how much confusion a hoax can cause in the field of UFO research. But what kind of evidence can be believed? After all, with many UFO sightings, there seems to be no real proof at all. Only one person's story of what they claim they saw. Is it in fact impossible to obtain real proof of visitors from outer space, even now that humankind has begun its own exploration of space? It would seem difficult to stage a false UFO sighting here. So would an astronaut's report of unidentified flying objects be considered undeniable evidence?
During the early days of manned spaceflight, UFO sightings by astronauts seem to have been fairly common. But now UFO researchers are divided on how many of these accounts can be considered reliable.
In some cases, the astronaut sightings were caused by simple mistakes by the astronauts themselves. One good example is the sighting which occurred on Gemini 4 by Jim McDivitt. He describes seeing a large cylindrical object with an arm sticking out of its side passing relatively close to the spacecraft. It wasn't until many years later that the object was identified as being Gemini 4's own booster rocket, which was in a similar orbit. It was a simple mistake, but it wasn't an alien spaceship.
If intelligent beings from another world are visiting us here on Earth, it seems reasonable to believe they are far superior to us in intelligence and technology. With this logic, one might suspect that they would be able to study us, even interact with us, without ever leaving positive evidence of their presence here. Does this mean, then, that we'll never be able to prove or disprove the existence of extraterrestrial beings on Earth?
It's a question of evidence. Are the abduction accounts alone sufficient to prove the event is occurring, or is something more tangible needed? Something like, say, the landing on the White House lawn.
I don't understand the motivation for making general statements like, if these things exist, where's the physical evidence? All elements of physical evidence that you could possibly want exist. We have pieces of material that allegedly came from a flying saucer in private hands. We have landing trace cases where the UFOs, the flying saucers, interact with the environment, and there are things that can be studied there. We have photographic cases where the computer enhancement techniques and whatnot have not been able to tell us a mechanism for hoaxing the photos. We have not found the strings holding the object up, for example. There are videotapes, there are movie footage. There are good eyewitness accounts from credible individuals. There are multiple witness cases. Every criticism offered by the debunkers, and I separate the debunkers from the skeptics, but every explanation offered by the debunkers as a reason for not believing in the UFO phenomenon is not a credible reason.
Because people have been seeing UFOs on every continent, in every culture, dating back hundreds or thousands of years, all over the world. Millions and millions of people, and these are eyewitnesses. If it was in a court of law, their testimony would be enough to send you away to jail. But because it's UFOs, it's weird, well, that can't be true. I think probably 90% of all UFO sightings are misidentifications of explainable phenomenon, but it's also true that 9 out of 10 UFO sightings aren't reported at all. We really have no idea how many people over the years have seen these things, but the numbers are staggering, and the reports are consistent.
The question of whether humans are alone in the universe has been debated for centuries. The answer may come sooner than we expect, and in ways we cannot anticipate.
But until then, the world still waits for absolute proof of the truth or falsehood of UFOs. And we will continue to watch the skies and carefully record every bit of evidence in the UFO diaries.